Every parent is trying to stay calm, get it right, and be the perfect parent for their child. But here's the truth. Staying calm isn't the most important thing in parenting, because the most powerful parenting strategy isn't what you do when things go right, it's what you do after you mess up. So if you've ever snapped at your child and carried that guilt all day, then this video is for you. Because this one simple skill can turn mistakes into trust, safety, and lifelong emotional resilience. And once you learn this, you'll never look at parenting the same again. So stay with me, because this one strategy will change everything. There's so much pressure in modern parenting to get it right, to stay calm, to say the right thing for your child, because if you say the wrong thing, you'll mess them up for life. But here's the thing that no one tells you when you're tired, exhausted, and low on patience, and that's that parenting doesn't happen in perfect conditions. As parents, the juggle is real. We're juggling relationships, we're juggling work, we're juggling the school run, we're tired, we're exhausted, we're low on patience. And that's the thing that we need to remember as we navigate through our parenting journey and we strive for perfection, because parenting is all about making incremental steps and progress rather than striving for perfection. As parents, we need to remember that mistakes aren't failure, they're inevitable. What matters most is not getting it right every time, but what we do after we get it wrong. And today I want to talk about the most powerful parenting strategy there is, and that is repair. And by the end of this video, you're going to have a 3-step framework on how you can repair with your child even during those difficult and challenging moments. So why does repair matter more than getting it right? So every parent will snap sometimes. We're only human. We need to let go of this unrealistic expectation that the modern parenting world has surrounded us in. That strive for perfection is just going to lead to frustration, exhaustion. It doesn't exist. Throw it in the bin and acknowledge that you are only human. You're going to be tired, you're going to be low on patience, you're going to be exhausted at times. As magical as parenting is, sometimes there are some difficult and challenging moments. Sometimes you're going to be feeling lost and confused and not sure how to respond to your child or where to turn. So by letting go of that unrealistic expectation of perfection, we open the door to allowing mistakes and then acknowledging what we do after we've made those mistakes. Because the difference between harm and healing isn't whether conflict happens, it's whether connection is restored. Because repair turns those moments of rupture into moments of trust. It shows your child that relationships can bend without breaking. And it also shows them that as human beings, we don't need to be flawless. They don't need to be flawless as kids, and we certainly don't need to be flawless as parents. So I guess the real important question is, if mistakes are unavoidable, what happens if repair is missing with our child? Before we continue, I want to share a real powerful quote from Dr. John Gottman. If you're unaware of Dr. John Gottman's work, he's a clinical psychologist. He's co-founder of the Gottman Institute, and he believes that the most powerful gift a parent can give their child is one of acknowledging their own mistakes. To be able to hold their hands up and say, I'm sorry, I got it wrong here. And the reason Dr. John Gottman believes this is so powerful is because it gives our children permission to make mistakes. It shows them what it is to be human. It shows them what a healthy relationship looks like, a relationship with repair. So the quote reads, "One of the most powerful gifts a parent can give to a child is to acknowledge their own mistakes, to say, I was wrong here, or I'm sorry." This is so powerful because it gives the child permission to make mistakes, to admit having messed up, and still be okay. One thing I just want to pick up on, and this is something that Dr. Becky Kennedy dives into brilliantly in her book, Good Inside, but also in a fantastic TED Talk that I'll link to in the description below. So what is the difference between an apology and repair? So we can lean on apologies really flippantly. They work to close a conversation. I'm sorry. And you sort of say it, you tick the box and you move on. But what we need to do with repair, and what repair does brilliantly, is it opens up the conversation with our child. It's more about connecting with them. It might not happen immediately in the moment. So we might model repair later that afternoon after an episode or an incident has happened with our child, but we allow things to settle, and then we meet with our child, we meet them where they are, we connect with them, and we really take time to model that connection and that repair with them. And I'll dive into a 3-step framework a little bit later on in this video. So repair is more about opening up the conversation, about the connection with our child, and an apology, which is part of the repair, but an apology is quite dismissive, closes the book, it's quite flippant. It doesn't open up the conversation of what actually happened and acknowledging our own mistakes with our child. So a great way to frame this, and this is something that Dr. Becky Kennedy dives into brilliantly in her TED Talk, is that first we have rupture. So rupture is that initial disconnection or conflict that we have with our child. And then after that rupture comes the repair. So that's the intentional process of acknowledging the rupture, taking responsibility for our behavior, and reconnecting with our child. As I've said, repair works to open up the conversation rather than shutting it down. So what happens when repair is missing? Let's take an example. So you're sitting at the dinner table with your child having a family meal. They reach out to grab the jug to pour themselves a drink, and they spill the water all over the table. You snap, you react quickly. What are you doing? Why did you do that? You've spilt it everywhere. Look at what you've done. Now, when repair after that moment doesn't happen, rarely will that child have an opportunity to take a step back and think, what was going on there? My parent was really overwhelmed. Instead, they're going to think, why do I always do this? Why is it always my fault? Why do I always make mistakes? And the heartbreaking thing is that children are wired to preserve relationships. So self-blame feels much safer for a child than actually believing love is fragile or unpredictable. And if we keep responding in this way, if we keep interacting with our child like this and not taking time to repair, then over time, unrepaired moments start painting the picture of how the child will think about themselves. They'll start to think that I'm too much, my actions cause problems, my feelings cause problems. And these moments don't disappear, they get stored, both emotionally and physically for our child. The brilliant thing is, and as I've said, as parents, mistakes are going to happen. We're always going to work on ourselves and our reactions towards our kids, but mistakes will happen. But when we learn to repair with our child, we interrupt these moments, we capture these moments to actually teach lifelong lessons that are going to serve our children long into adulthood. It stops that shame taking root inside our child. It restores emotional safety and protects our child's sense of self-worth. So let's explore what real repair actually looks like, and also explore why it's so uncomfortable for parents to model repair, because traditionally it's something parents haven't been comfortable doing. So let's dive into that in the next section. Why is repair so hard for parents? I think it asks for humility. Repair is complicated, and many parents weren't repaired with as children. Traditionally, parents were told that they're the boss, that they need to rule with the iron fist. Children need to conform and do as they're told, and that if you don't parent this way, you lose authority and children start running riot. Traditionally, mistakes were minimized, they were shamed, they were ignored, and obviously, if you were brought up with that within your psyche, then repair can feel like you're losing authority, you're admitting failure, you're giving up control. But we need to remember as parents, real repair, real connection doesn't weaken your leadership. It models accountability with your kids without that shame. It's where children learn accountability. They learn to own mistakes. They learn about emotional regulation. But most importantly, they learn how to repair relationships for life. That's the most important thing, because as our child grows, we want them to know what a healthy relationship looks like. If our relationship with our child doesn't include repair, it's about power and control, then that's what they're going to look for as they start forming relationships and romantic relationships as they grow into adults. However, as we learn to model repair, as we learn this skill and integrate it into the way we interact with our children, then they're going to know what to look for as they grow older and start forming those relationships. They're going to be able to call it out. They're going to be able to flag when there's a red flag in one of their relationships when they're older. And what we need to be careful of as parents, we need to try and avoid protecting our own discomfort. And I think this is where many parents get stuck and what you can probably label as not repair. So responding to our child with things like, you're fine, or you made me shout, or let's just get on with it and let's forget about it. Let's get on with it. I think it's really important to acknowledge that those responses, as I've said, protect our discomfort, but not our child's sense of well-being. Okay, so where do we start? How do we begin to model repair with our child? So I've broken it down into a simple 3-step framework. So number 1, and that's regulate. We can't begin to start modeling repair with our child if we are still escalated out of control, because more often than not, we're escalated, our child is completely dysregulated. So if we try and model repair, we're just going to be throwing fuel on the fire and the whole situation is going to continue to escalate out of control. So you're absolutely okay to take a moment, take a step back, pause, take a breath, take a moment to ground your body. And sometimes you might even say to your child that, look, I need a minute. Let me take a moment just to come back to a level of calm, and then I can engage with you, because at the moment I'm completely dysregulated. And that's absolutely okay, because this teaches our child that emotions can settle. It models that emotional regulation, and it tells them that safety can return. And then when it does, we can open the door for that communication and connection with our child. Number 2, and this is a must, and that's taking ownership. This is one that many parents struggle with. And we need to remember, taking ownership isn't admitting failure. We need to name what we did without any excuses. It doesn't look like, you made me angry, so I shouted. It's more like, I raised my voice earlier and that wasn't okay. I'm sorry with how that made you feel. This teaches accountability without shame. It shows that mistakes don't end relationships. And more importantly, it models what a healthy relationship looks like. Because as I've said, children will grow to assume that they can be treated a certain way, and that's absolutely normal. So taking ownership and accountability for our actions is a must. And finally, number 3, and as I've said, beyond that apology, that's reaffirm and reassure. Acknowledge their feelings, restore that safety, reaffirm that love with your child. And this is what that connection looks like. It's not just, I'm sorry, and we move on with our day. It's taking a moment to really model that repair, have that connection, acknowledge their feelings, let them know that your actions made them feel a certain type of way. It might sound like, that was scary for you, or you didn't deserve that, or I love you and we're okay. And I promise you, this is where the healing happens. This is when your child will begin to come back to a level of calm themselves. Because much like when a grown adult is having a panic attack, a calming presence absolutely works to reduce that stress response. It might not happen immediately, it might take time, but a calming presence of another human being does help regulate that nervous system and reduce that stress response and bring our kids back to a level of calm. And obviously, as we take time to model repair and secure that connection, reconnect with our child, that's where the powerful strategy of this connection comes into play. If you want to go one step further, open dialogue with your child. Give them that space to share how they were feeling and respond to them accordingly. And finally, I want to touch on a very common question from parents. What if it's too late? I've parented this way. I've got a 7, 8, 9-year-old. What if it's too late? What if the damage is done? Now, I've got Dr. Becky Kennedy to thank you for this powerful parenting reframe. But if you truly believe it's too late with your child, you absolutely need to listen to this. So imagine receiving a letter from your parents. So I'm assuming you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, and you were parented with without repair as a child. So imagine now, today, you receive a letter from your parents. Now, the letter acknowledges that things weren't perfect when you were growing up. There's an apology in the letter. There's acknowledgement of mistakes. There's repair. Your parent dives into a few specific examples and it really touches you. You really feel that connection from your parent, that they've taken the time to acknowledge their mistakes, to say that they were sorry, and to really connect with you in that letter. So if you read this from your parent now, as I've said, in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, how would that make you feel? Will it change anything for you? Okay, and now think of your child. If you've got a child, then there's 100% chance that child is younger than you. The story of their life is shorter than yours. So now at the age of 30 or 40, if receiving that letter from your parent had an impact on you, it made you feel a certain type of way, acknowledge that by you modeling repair with your child, it absolutely will change everything and make them feel a certain type of way too. So just acknowledge that modeling repair with your child from today will absolutely have a profound impact on your child. Just remember, as parents, you don't need to be perfect. You don't always need to be parenting from a place of calm. But if you can remember this powerful parenting strategy, then I guarantee it will absolutely change everything. Now, before you go, if you're finding yourself continually stressed or frustrated as parents, I'm going to link you to a really helpful video above. So be sure to watch that video. If you enjoyed this, make sure you hit like, even subscribe, and YouTube will serve you with more of my videos in the future. Thanks for watching.